All right, folks, welcome. I am going to talk about 1.2.6, the first part, and then I'm going to come back in another one and do 1.2.6 on REPL IT for the last question. So this is about strings and making string objects, concatenation, literals, and more. So we're going to try to create string objects and reference them. So first things first, there are two ways to make a string. This one's called a string literal. It's kind of hot wiring a car, more or less. You're doing the shortcut to make a string. It stores a string object. You do have to declare that it's going to be a string, give it a name, and store this. But this is the way to do it using a class constructor, because string is not a primitive data type. It's a reference variable. That's why it has a capital S. If you notice, int and Boolean and stuff have lowercase s's. This one has a capital S because string is a class in itself and it has its own constructor. So you could also do it the more official way and say string state equals new string main or whatever. Why is main the state? So one thing that happens, actually you get tons of stuff when you actually make a string. So if you go to Google here and type in Java string methods, you can see, I always use Oracle, because they're the ones who create Java. Basically, if you scroll down here, there's all the constructors. You don't really need a ton on that, but look at all these methods. You can find where a character is at in a word. You can concatenate by using this. You can compare to, ends with. You can find out if a string ends with a certain letter. You can do index of, is empty, turn them all to lowercase, right? Or find out if it starts with. So yeah, change your words to lowercase, to string, to uppercase. You get all these with a string. They're like built in. Someone else did the hard work for you. Okay, so that's one thing to know. You can always look it up if you wonder what you can do with a string. So on here, this says the great state of main. If you look at this, they created a string literal. Another way to do that would be to create an object by using the keyword new, right? And then use the class name, and then you can type in Ohio, because clearly that's the greatest state. Let's get this one out of here with a comment. If you run this, you got it. Boom, beautiful. Okay, now here's something important to know. Strings are immutable. And immutable is a fancy word for does not change. You can use concatenation. We've already used it before. That's to put two things side by side. We've used the plus sign for that, right? There's also a method built into strings called concat. So as soon as you use strings, I think I saw it in here. Yeah, concat, there it is. So as soon as you created this string called winter, and its variable name is state herb of main, I'm guessing, you do state herb concat, and it will slap the word green on the back of it. And then you print out state herb. Oh, but wait. Oh, what? It says winter still. And that's because strings are immutable. You cannot change what the value is inside state herb. Now, it did technically slap the word green on the back of winter. It just can't print it out unless you put that in a print statement. So that was a surprise, right? It didn't overwrite it. It slapped it on there. It slapped wintergreen in the memory, but it didn't print it out because it couldn't change what it is. Now you can do that with a system like this. See how here you named state herb and you called it winter, and then you reset it or you overwrite it, kind of like we do x equals x plus 5. You are taking the old value of state herb and you are concatenating the word green on the back of winter and then restoring it as state herb. So this one works like it should. So basically you got to do that overwriting thing because the original meaning of that variable disappears. Yeah, so because it's immutable. Now, what happened to the old one? Winter was basically thrown away. The old one disappears. All right, answer those questions. You can look at the explanations too, especially this last one. There's number 6, landlocked salmon trout. Anyway, so we've been doing concatenation, right? We've done it before. So one says do it with the plus, kind of like this. The other says do it with the plus equals, kind of like this. So, you can do that pretty easily. But be careful because remember state treat. So it wouldn't be okay if I just said state treat plus pi. That wouldn't actually go anywhere, because if you just did that and you went to print state treat, it would just go back to this one and print out whoopee. Oh, I should probably spell it right. If I go back in and say state treat equals state treat plus pi, then it should restore what you actually have in state treat. And then kind of the same deal here, nothing crazy. State, berry plus equals. You're going to add to that blueberry. So wild blueberries. And then if you run it, it should come out correctly. Whoopie pies. Ooh, should I make that a space? Maybe. Whatever, it's fine. Whoopie pie and wild blueberries. All right. So there's implicit type conversion, which is basically the compiler automatically changes something that was an int into a string. If your first variable was a string, your age is, and your second one's an int, it's not going to do regular addition. If this is a string and it has a plus, it's going to concatenate age as a string. It'll convert it to a string first. And we've kind of already done that before when we were working with variables and print statements. Your age is 16. If you flip-flop those, you sound like Yoda. Try it out. And then escape sequences. We've already worked with new line. Probably haven't worked with this. And this. What if you need to put a quote inside, like, what if you need a quote inside your print statement? Like you want to say, quote unquote, hello. If you want that in your statement, you need a way to type a quote that doesn't just recognize it as a string. And it's kind of weird. If you look at this one, you're writing, let me open this wider. You're writing state song, and you start with a quote. That makes it a string. And then what does this do? That uses the escape character to actually put a quote in front of this word. It's like your computer doesn't even see this. It sees it just as a way to not think that you ended your string. You started your string, and you ended your string right away. So when you run this, it's crazy. It says, this is like poetry, man. It's like quote mark comes from this because you use the escape character. Oh, pine tree state, and then this uses the new line, jumps down to your woods, and then you're like, wait, how did they put a slash in here? Well, guess what? If you want a slash to show up, you need a slash to escape out of thinking of slashes as like comments. So you got to do slash slash to count as one slash. So your woods or fields and hills, and this is really crazy. I don't know why we wanted this extra one here, but if you want to end it with a quote, it has this slash quote, and it's worth looking at. When I look at this, that's the escape character, so it's going to print whatever's behind it, a slash. And then this one's an escape character, so it's going to print what's behind it, which is quote marks. And then the last quote marks are just to end the first quote marks. Holy cow, that was weird, right? So add some stuff to your notes on that. We'll definitely cover that in the, what's it called? our summary for the AP test, which we need to go over some of those. All right, so that wraps that up. I'm going to come back and talk about how to do number 12 on REPL IT. All right, talk to you later, folks.